Be'ezrat Hashem, this week we are reading Parashat Emor. Now we're going to have the same issue that we had last week, and it's going to be running now for the rest of the summer, that here in Israel we are one step ahead. For the diaspora, they're 1 week behind. Because for us, we had 1 day of Pesach last week, and Shabbat was a regular Shabbat, so we read Parashat Achrimot. For the Jews in the diaspora, they had a 2nd day of Pesach, 2 days of Yom Tov, so it fell on Shabbat, but for them was a Pesach, so they're reading now the parasha in a delay, and that's going to now drag into the summer. But nevertheless, now we're constantly a week ahead of the rest of the world, which is enough said that Israel is always one step ahead.
Amen.
But nevertheless, we are reading here Parashat Emor. Outside Israel, they're going to be reading Parashat Kedoshim. But this week's parasha is a very important parasha, and it's the parasha that lays out for us all the holidays of our Jewish calendar. Besides, of course, Purim and Chanukah, because they're not biblical holidays, they came way after. But nevertheless, this parasha is where we get our order of all the Chagim, all the holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Shavuot and Pesach and everything, and what we need to do, how we need to do. But, very interestingly, all the order of all the holidays starts with another event that we celebrate very often, and that's the day of Shabbat. And first, even before we even start talking, we're going to concentrate in this class a lot about the Shabbat. And many people that they're not observant or not Jewish, when they're looking at the list of things that you need to do on Shabbat, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, sometimes we have guests coming and they're looking and they're like, why do you have to be so strict? I mean, why isn't it enough just to rest? Isn't it enough? Okay, I understand you don't want to work, you don't want to do certain things, but why are you so strict and so particular about every little thing? I mean, it seems like Shabbat is not so much restful, it's more stressful. Most people, if you go to their houses a minute before Shabbat, you would think that you would have a nice calm feeling, and you'll see the wife sitting and reading Tehillim, and the husband learning. Usually it's a madhouse a minute before Shabbat. And the house is all hectic and a mess, so instead of being restful, it looks very stressful. So, but nevertheless, that's one thing we're going to address today. But first we want to understand, I mean, we know about Shabbat in many other parashot, but in this specific parasha, we're going to go through all the festivals and holidays of the year, and it all starts with the prohibition and the mitzvah of Shabbat. So we have Shabbat, and then it goes into all the holidays. What's interesting here is, first of all, why in this parasha Shabbat is mentioned. I mean, this parasha is focusing on the festivals and the holidays. So first of all, why specifically Shabbat is mentioned in this parasha? I mean, Shabbat is mentioned in many parashot, but why here it's referring to Shabbat attached to all the holidays? And not only that, why Shabbat is considered different and more special than the rest of the holidays. So, just to give a little bit of background about the parasha, this parasha, Parashat Emor, starts with the Kadosh Baruch Hu telling to Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Kohanim, Emor el Kohanim, say to the Kohanim that they have to be holy, separated, segregated, exalted, and so forth, and then warn the Levites, warn the rest of the nation not to become impure, and so forth, and then it goes into the holidays. This parasha we read 3 times a year. We're going to read it this week, the entire parasha, of course, but twice a year we read a partial part of this parasha, and that's on the holiday of Pesach and on the holiday of Sukkot. If you attended the synagogue on the 2nd day of Pesach, for us in Israel it's already Chol HaMoed. In America, it's the 2nd day of Pesach. For us, it's already the 1st day of Chol HaMoed. This is what we read, the Kriyat Torah. If you attended the Shul, the Bet Knesset this year, that's what we read, Parashat Emor. And we're going to read it again also in Sukkot. Of course, on Pesach and Sukkot, we don't read the entire parasha. We just read a partial of it about the festivals. Now, Again, we read this on Pesach and Shavuot, and it says in this parasha all the holidays, all the festivals and the holidays. And what is really said there? It's all the types of the holidays that we celebrate. And we have, Baruch Hashem, a lot. We have Shavuot, we're going to be celebrating soon. We just did Pesach, and then we have Rosh Hashanah will come, and Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and so forth. But the entire list starts with a very special day that we celebrate, which is, of course, Shabbat. And what does it say to us there? Very simple. Sheshet Yamim ta'avod. You should work 6 days a week. V'yom Shabbat. On the 7th day, you have to rest. Shabbat v'inafash. Now, this parasha is starting also with another mitzvah that Rashi calls it the most basic foundation of the Torah, which we read in this parasha also, is the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, of sanctifying the month. Rashi actually says that this mitzvah should have been the first mitzvah in the Torah. But nevertheless, we just now celebrated yesterday Rosh Chodesh. Not only that we celebrated Rosh Chodesh, before that, on Shabbat, we did what's called Kiddush HaChodesh, that we prepare for the coming of the month. And this, Rashi says, is a mitzvah b'sisit. This is one of the foundations of all the mitzvot, because without sanctifying the month, how do we know when we celebrate the holidays? Which means we have to have this mitzvah of sanctifying the month, because if not, we're not going to know when are the holidays. Now, in our generation, we're spoiled. We have a calendar. But in many years before, they didn't have a calendar. They had to wait to look for the moon, go to the Beit Din, give the testimony, and the Beit Din will decide, okay, now it's going to be Rosh Chodesh, now we know when the holidays are. So in this parasha, it's also talking about this important mitzvah that is called Mitzvat Kiddush HaChodesh, the mitzvah of sanctifying the month. We're going to talk about it a little bit shortly, what they used to do and how they used to do and why is it so important. But nevertheless, just to give a little bit of background in the parasha. So first of all, we have all the holidays of the year, then we have the day of Shabbat, and now we also find the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. So in order for me to know when is the holidays, then I need to know when is Rosh Chodesh. Because if I don't know when's the first day of the month, how would I know when Pesach is going to be? Or Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah? So when you're looking at the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, this is not just me saying, okay, today is Rosh Chodesh. It's called Kiddush HaChodesh, that I'm sanctifying the Rosh Chodesh. But you know what I do? I decide time. I decide when time is going to be. Me as a human being, not an angel, not the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We as human beings have the power to decide when it's going to be Rosh Chodesh. There's a famous midrash that the angels go up to Hashem and they tell Hashem, when is going to be Yom Kippur? We need to prepare. So he says, I don't know, go down to the world, look with the Beit Din. When the Beit Din is going to decide when it's going to be Aleph Tishrei, then we'll know when it will be Yom Kippur. So how do you sanctify the month? How do you decide? Who decides? Then the way it works is that our sages decided, based on the teachings of the Torah, that the Jewish month, not any other calendar, the Jewish month is a lunar cycle. It's called Chodesh Yareach, that we go by the moon, we don't go by the sun. Many other faiths, they go by the sun, and they count the days of the year based on the cycle of the sun. But in Judaism, we don't do by the sun, we go by the moon. And the moon has 29 and a half days that it makes a circle. And we count our months only by the cycle of the moon. And this cycle that it does takes the moon not exactly, but about 29 and a half days to make a whole cycle. Now, how do we know when all this happens? How do we sanctify the month? Is that they used to have witnesses, and they would wait for witnesses to see the moon. When do you see really the moon? When is the first time that you see the moon? It's called the molad, the birth of the moon. Because at some point we don't see it at all, and then the first moment that we see it, you know how you see it? Like a little banana, like a little line. You don't see the whole moon. And the witnesses would go out, stand on the mountaintops or whatever it is, and look and wait. And once they would see it, go to the Beit Din, and the Beit Din will interrogate them. How did it look? When did it look? What angle was it? The Beit Din knew to ask the right questions to make sure that this is really the right testimony. Now we have calendars. We don't look in the sky, so we know precisely when the molad is going to be. So what do we do on Shabbat? Shabbat Mevarchim, the Shabbat that we bless the month before Rosh Chodesh, after Kriyat Torah. Then the Chazan will announce the molad is going to be this Shabbat, this month of this year. The molad of Rosh Chodesh Iyar was on Shabbat at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 minutes. Exactly. And the Chazan will announce when it's going to be. Hypothetically, if somebody would go and look, they should have seen this little, I call it a little banana, because that's when the moon looks like a little banana, like a little line. That's when the moon appears again. And then it would take about 29 and a half days to make a cycle. It's not exactly 29 and a half. It's divided into what's called chalakim, 2 parts. But nevertheless, we know how to calculate the cycle of the moon, and that's why we have calendars years to come. And I'm not saying it's an easy calculation. It's actually a very difficult calculation. But nevertheless, we know how to do it. At the time of Beit HaMikdash, there was witnesses. They would go, look at the moon, find the moon, go to the Beit Din, give their testimony, and that's how they would decide, okay, now it's going to be Rosh Chodesh. And this would be decided based on the tracking of the moon and the testimony of the witnesses, and that's how they decided when Rosh Chodesh is going to be. So not only that, based on what Rashi says, that this should have been the first mitzvah, regardless of what Rashi says, this is a critical mitzvah. This is a mitzvah that if we don't apply it the right way, how do we know when we're going to celebrate Yamim Tovim? How do we know when the Chagim is going to be? So it's not only a foundation or a strong mitzvah, it's a critical mitzvah. Now, when we decide when Rosh Chodesh is going to be, is when we decide when the holidays are going to be. Now, there's a very famous story in the Talmud that one time 2 witnesses came to the Beit Din, and the head of the Beit Din was Rabban Gamliel. And they came to him and they said, we saw the moon. He started interrogating them, and that happened on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Now this is already depending when we're going to do Rosh Hashanah. This is not Pesach that I have 15 days to prepare. This was on the night of Rosh Hashanah, so it can only be on Lamed Elul, on Aleph Tishrei. Nevertheless, the story goes that these 2 witnesses came to the Beit Din, to Rabban Gamliel, and they were interrogated. Rabban Gamliel says, okay, today is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Today is going to be Rosh Hashanah, Aleph Tishrei. Okay, he believed them and he sanctified the month. There was a certain Tana in the Beit Din. His name is Rabbi Dosa ben Horkonos. Maybe you heard the name, a very famous Tana. He looked at these 2 witnesses and he says, you know what? Something stinks here. I don't believe these 2 guys. I think they're fooling us. And at the time, there were a group of people they used to call Tzedokim. And these were evil people that they used to make all sorts of inventions to confuse us. If you remember, we spoke about it a couple of times, that how would they let everybody know that Rosh Chodesh? We think they had a WhatsApp group. Then they had to send messengers from Yerushalayim to let everybody know, okay, the Beit Din made it a Rosh Chodesh and this is the Rosh Chodesh. So once what they used to do is they used to light up bonfires. And then one city or town will see the bonfire. Oh, Rosh Chodesh. They will light a bonfire and everybody would see. So these tzeddokim, this group of people, used to come and light bonfires the day before, 2 minutes before, to confuse everybody. Nevertheless, Rabbi Dosa ben Horkonos looked at these 2 witnesses and says, I have a feeling these guys are tzeddokim. I think they're lying to us. He goes to Rabban Gamliel and says, I have a bad feeling with these 2. Rabban Gamliel says, no, I believe them. I decided today is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Rabbi Dosa ben Horkonos didn't like that, so he went to his colleague, another great Tana that was sitting in the Beit Din, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah. And he comes and tells him, listen, I don't believe these 2 witnesses. And Rabban Gamliel just sanctified the month, and I think these are phonies. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah says, if this is the case, then Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow. And if Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow, that means that Yom Kippur is going to be the next day, what everybody is going to be celebrating. And you know what he did? He says, I'm going to celebrate Yom Kippur the next day. Now, can you imagine what that would look like? That the president of the Beit Din, Rabban Gamliel, says today is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is going to be in 10 days, everybody's celebrating Yom Kippur, then comes another great Tana, one of the heads of the Beit Din says, no, I'm doing Yom Kippur the next day. Next day? How would that look, that everybody's doing today Yom Kippur and another person, another great sage is doing it the next day? He says, no, I also don't believe these two witnesses. For me, it's not Rosh Chodesh, means Rosh Chodesh is tomorrow. I'm going to follow according to what I see, and I'm going to celebrate Yom Kippur the day after. Okay. They come, of course, to Rabban Gamliel, and they say, listen, this is, okay, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah comes and says, listen, I don't believe these witnesses. I'm going to celebrate Yom Kippur the next day. Rabban Gamliel tells him, listen, we have a majority. And the majority goes by what I said, that today is Rosh Hashanah, so it means Yom Kippur will be in 10 days, and that's where everybody is celebrating. So you also have to celebrate it like us, because we are majority. You can't go against the Beit Din. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah didn't know what to do, so who does he go to? He goes to Rabbi Akiva. And he goes to Rabbi Akiva and he tells him, listen, these witnesses went to Rabban Gamliel, and I don't believe them. Not only that I don't believe them, also Rabbi Dosa ben Orkanos doesn't believe them. So what should we do? Should we celebrate Yom Kippur according to what Rabban Gamliel did? Or should we celebrate it according to what we think is the truth, and it will be the next day? Rabbi Akiva quoted the pasuk from this week's parasha that says, Ele Moadei Hashem, these are the Moadim, the festivals of Hashem, Asher Tikreu Otam Bemoadam, that you should read them in their time. But Rabbi Akiva says, don't call it Otam. You know how you write Otam? Aleph, Taf, Mem. Otam, without a Vav, with a Cholam Chaser, with a dot. Rabbi Akiva says, don't say Otam, say Atem. Same letters, Aleph, Taf, Mem, without the Vav, of course. So he says, don't say Otam, them, say Atem, you. You are the one. Ele Moadei Hashem asher tikru Atem b'moadam. You decide when is the Moadim. Nobody else. Not Hashem, not the angels. You, the Beit Din, you decide. Rabban Gamliel is the head of the Beit Din. He decided, that's when Yom Kippur is. That's when Rosh Chodesh. You celebrate it with the Beit Din, with Rabban Gamliel, and with everybody. Even though that according to your perception, it's the wrong day. But he said that's the day. Asher tikru atem b'moadam. That's when you're celebrating it. And that's what was the decree. Rabbi Akiva gave him the answer, and they celebrated the day according to Rabban Gamliel. Even though according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, it was the wrong day, but nevertheless, they made the decision. That's when they read it. So, we learn from that this mitzvah was given to us, that we set the time. We, not me, Moishele and me. The Beit Din, we have the power, not the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We as human beings have the authority to set up when it's going to be Rosh Chodesh. Can you imagine that now it's going to affect the entire nation for the rest of the year? But nevertheless, that's what the Talmud explains to us, that we are the one who has the power. Now comes a very big question. Okay, I understood that we have the power to set the time. Now comes a big question. If you go in the order of this parasha, when you go in all the holidays, what's the first holiday that the parasha says? Shabbat. How does the Shabbat come in here? Why this parasha is talking to me about Shabbat? It's talking about Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah. Why is Shabbat here? What's the connection? What, we decide when Shabbat is going to be? Now, according to what we just said, we understand that we decide when Rosh Chodesh is going to be. When I'm saying we, I'm talking about the Beit Din. We humans. We decide when Rosh Hashanah will be. We decide when Yom Kippur is going to be. When Sukkot, when Pesach, when Rosh Chodesh. Why is Shabbat in the same category? Do we decide when Shabbat is going to be? Honey, let's do Shabbat tomorrow. But it's Tuesday. Tomorrow is a good day. We don't decide when Shabbat is going to be. Shabbat is set from Sheshet Yamei Bereshit, from the 6th day of creation, we don't have control of moving the Shabbat. The Shabbat is decided by Hashem. Holidays, we decide. So how Shabbat and the holidays are said in the same text, in the same place in the Torah? Why is that? Where do we see a connection? And why is the Shabbat suddenly pushed in here? Say it in a different parasha. Why does it have to be said now with the holidays? Rashi is asking the question, why is Shabbat is squeezed in with the Moadot, with the festivals and the holidays? Doesn't even make sense. Not only that, we know, you don't have to be a genius here, that Shabbat is much more strict than all the rest of the holidays. And again, I'm not talking about Purim and Chanukah. These are not biblical holidays. These are holidays that were added later by the Sanhedrin, by our sages. We're talking here about Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and so forth. We do see with our own physical eyes the Shabbat is a much more strict laws than any of the holidays. So again, what's the connection? I think, based on my common sense, Shabbat shouldn't have been mentioned in this text right now. Tell me about the holidays, leave the Shabbat out. Really, what's the difference between the Shabbat and festivals? I know we're mentioning here different holidays, but we really have 3 festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Yom Kippur is not a festival, Rosh Hashanah is not a festival, but nevertheless, it's also in the package. But when you take all of them on one side and you put Shabbat on the other side, what's the difference between the Shabbat and a Yom Tov? Really, there are 4 differences between Shabbat and the festivals. Four differences. Shabbat, when we're doing Kiddush, I hope you listen to the Kiddush, not only waiting for the wine to be served, but how do we conclude the Kiddush? With the 2 words, Mekadesh HaShabbat. That Hashem, He sanctifies the Shabbat. How do we conclude the Kiddush of a festival? This should be fresh in your mind. I mean, we had a festival 2 weeks ago, not even. Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. Sanctifying the nation of Israel and times. So we have here 2 separations. Shabbat, Hashem sanctifies it. It belongs to Hashem. Shabbat doesn't belong to me even. Shabbat is only for Hashem. Shabbat l'Hashem Elokecha. Shabbat belongs to Hashem. Shabbat is the day of rest for Hashem. And Shabbat is sanctified by Hashem. This is Hashem's day. It has nothing to do with me. If you look in the references in the Torah, again, in Hebrew makes much more sense, but in Hebrew it says Shabbat l'Hashem Elokecha. Shabbat to Hashem, your God. It has nothing to do with you. The fact that you're commanded to observe Shabbat, that's one thing. But Shabbat is Hashem's day. It's not my day. Yom Tov, on the other hand, a festival, that's ready for me. This is the festival that Hashem gave to me, not me, to Alon, to us. But I'm saying is that Shabbat is sanctified by Hashem. Yamim Tovim, festivals, are sanctified by us, by humans. This is the first difference between Shabbat and the holidays. Second difference, on a Yom Tov and on Shabbat, but we'll say the other way around, on Shabbat you're not allowed to do any labor, any melacha. But on Yom Tov I'm allowed to do melacha. I'm allowed to cook on Yom Tov, on a festival. I'm allowed to do many things on Yom Tov. If it's to do with food, suddenly I have a whole list of things that I'm allowed to do on a festival. On Shabbat, lo ta'aseh kol melacha. Can't do any labor. Even if you're stuck without food, I'm sorry, you'll stay hungry. On Yom Tov, no. You can go and slaughter an animal on a Yom Tov. To slaughter an animal? Yeah, you can carry the knife even. There's not a problem. You can skin the animal, cut the animal, barbecue it, do whatever you want. This is called ochel nefesh. You are allowed to do many melachot, labors, on Yom Tov to eat. Shabbat, you can starve. Torah tells you, I'm sorry, you didn't prepare for Shabbat. Sorry today, you're going to be on a diet for 24 hours. Mi shetarach b'Shabbat, yochal b'Shabbat. If you worked and prepared before Shabbat, you'll eat on Shabbat. So we see here on Yom Tov, I'm allowed to do malechet avodah. Now malechet avodah is not only a labor for me to, or an action for me to cook or something like that. Malechet avodah is something that is a professional task. That I'm allowed to do on Yom Tov when it comes to eat and many other things. But on Shabbat, you know what it says? Shabbat v'inafash, menucha. You're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to do any labor on Shabbat. And not only that I'm not allowed to do labor, I have to lishvot. Lishvot means you can't do nothing. So this is a day of rest, which comes a big question, of course. I remember once when I first came to Eretz Israel, I grew up here, but when we came back 4 years ago, in the beginning we were planning on living in a little city called Poleg, next to Netanya. That's where we landed. And we rented an Airbnb for like a week or two till we found the house. And the apartment was like on the 14th floor. And no, they had a Shabbat elevator. But again, this is questionable if you can go in the Shabbat elevator or not. This is everybody can do whatever wherever they go by. Each one should ask their rabbi. I know many people don't go by the Shabbat elevator. But nevertheless, that's not the point. We landed a few days before Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah fell on a Shabbat. And we came, it was hot. It was September. Hot here in Israel. And we came back from like a 2-kilometer walk from the Bet Knesset. Schwitzing. And we had a little baby. Chaya was like 4 months old. And we were carrying the stroller and sweating going up the stairs. And one of the neighbors came out. He's like, you need help? No, I only have another 9 flights to climb. It's okay. But nevertheless, and then he asked me then, aren't you supposed to be resting today? Why don't you go into the elevator? This is a rest. Don't look like you're resting so much. It looks like you're working very hard now. This doesn't look like a rest. And 40 degrees Celsius outside, and you're already having a shower, just going up. So some people will come and say, where's the rest here? I'm not allowed to be comfortably transported in an elevator. Well, some people say, hey, it's very hot. Why shouldn't I go in an air-conditioned car to shul? It's a rest. You know what it is to walk 2 kilometers? I lived somewhere in California. We used to walk 3.2 kilometers to the Bet Knesset. By the time I came to the Bet Knesset, I lost 2 kilos just of sweat. Baruch Hashem, they had a mikveh there. I would fall into the mikveh just to get some facial color. My face was all like a tomato. So, and some people tell me, why, this doesn't look like rest. This looks like hard labor. Who walks 3.2 kilometers to get to a shul? Get in a car. Put the air conditioning on. Cold air blowing on your face. That's resting. So of course one can argue and say the Shabbat doesn't look so much like rest. It looks like more hard work. But nevertheless, Shabbat, we are commanded, you have to rest. You can't do anything. This is called lishbot. Lishbot is you go on strike. You don't do nothing. So we see that on Yom Tov, certain things I'm not allowed to do. I'm allowed to cook and do any type of labor that has to do with eating and taking care of myself. But any type of labor that is called what's called mal'echet avodah, that it's a professional type of work, that I'm not allowed to do. You're not allowed to sew on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do many other things. If it's not for me to benefit for food, I'm not allowed to do. Okay, so on Yom Tov also I have to refrain from doing certain things. But on Shabbat, I'm not allowed to do nothing. Completely. This is called Shvita. Shvita, like in English, you will translate it as a strike. But what is a strike? I'm not doing nothing. I'm standing here and I'm not moving. The third difference between Shabbat and a Yom Tov, a festival, Shabbat, I'm not allowed to do any type of labor. There's no negotiating here. Sorry to say that, even if you're starving to death, you're not allowed to prepare food. But on Yom Tov, I'm allowed to. So I already see another separation. Shabbat, 100% you're not allowed to. On a Yom Tov, you're allowed to do something. And the fourth thing that some might say is the most dominating and most powerful, and this is where we want to get what we're trying to learn from this class. You know what we do on Shabbat after Shabbat leaves? We do Havdalah, right? We say a blessing on the wine, which we do that also on a Yom Tov. We light fire, not in that order, but we light fire, and we also smell besamim. Do you smell besamim when you do Havdalah after Yom Tov? No, it's only for Shabbat. Why do you smell besamim?
To distinguish the wine.
Not only that, there are many different reasons, but one of the reasons why we smell besamim, because you were flying in a very high altitude the entire Shabbat. whether you feel it or not. Shabbat comes in, you get turbo engines and you go to a much higher spiritual altitude. Motzei Shabbat comes, you lose altitude. This is called depression after Shabbat. Some women get depression after labor. And how do you call it? Postpartum. And many people get post-Shabbat depression. Shabbat goes down, all the air goes out. Some people don't feel it. On Shabbat, we get an additional level to our nefesh, ruach, and neshama. We just learned now in the class before that with the Ben Ish Chai, who says 6 times on Shabbat you get nefesh, ruach, and neshama on Shabbat at night, Friday night, and nefesh, ruach, neshama, Shabbat on the day. 6 aliyot neshama. It's not that you're getting roommates, by the way. When people think that you're getting on Shabbat a neshama etera, this is not a roommate, that you're getting another soul. Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good, how are you? Rather, you get an elevation to the level of your neshama. This is a neshama etera. But nevertheless, Shabbat leaves, the air goes out. We fall into some spiritual depression after Shabbat. So our sages say, take something good to smell, appease your soul. This is comforting the neshama when you smell something. The Ari Kadosh says it's important to take 3 sniffs. One for the nefesh, one for the ruach, one for the neshama. Not to do like some people go like this. No, take a sniff. I see sometimes people do all sorts of weird things. Sniff it. Take it in. And you get something that has a strong scent. And even better, to do it with something natural. When I became observant, I didn't know anything. So I used to smell perfume. I was like, ooh, it's good. It's a Givenchy. What are you talking about? It's a very expensive aftershave. Till somebody comes and tells me, no, you fool, you don't smell aftershaves. You need to smell something from the nature, from some scent, from a herb or something. Nevertheless, you want to smell something strong. Why? Because it appeases the soul. Whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you feel it or not, the good scent, it calms the soul down. Like a little kid, you give him a little bit of candy. So this, what it does, it's called romimut nefesh. It elevates the nefesh. I don't know about you, I can only talk about myself. The first maybe 7 or 8 years of me observing Shabbat, I hated Shabbat. I observed every little detail in the Shabbat, but I hated it. I couldn't stand Shabbat. Shabbat would come, I would get depressed before the Shabbat. And the summer Shabbats would kill me. I would sleep the whole Shabbat. I'd wake up in the morning, go and pray, go back to bed, tell my wife, wake me up for Mincha and Arvit. I couldn't stand Shabbat. I get all uptight, and I just didn't like it. And I couldn't understand, what's this deal with Shabbat? Everybody's so excited with the Shabbat, I couldn't stand it. Baruch Hashem, some point, about 7, 8 years into me observing Shabbat, suddenly something was removed. Suddenly I was able to feel and get this kedusha of Shabbat, and now I understood what it means. Now I get all excited before Shabbat. I already fantasizing on the Shabbat already on Monday. Shabbat in the afternoon, I'm already saying, oh no, we only have 4 hours. And you see, when we sit here for Suda Shlishit, we take our time, no rush. If it was up to me, we would do off the light 12 o'clock at night. But I just see people already getting uncomfortable on their chairs and looking at the clock. Why are you looking at the clock? You looked at the clock a minute ago. But nevertheless, Shabbat is so powerful that if you really tap into it, elevates your soul to such a level that when Shabbat goes out, you fall. But nevertheless, of course, you want to cherish the Shabbat and enjoy every moment of the Shabbat. But when we want to conclude the 4 differences between Shabbat and Yom Tov, so the 4th one, like I said, that on Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, we do Havdalah. And we see from that Shabbat is a different day than Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, we don't do Havdalah on Besamim. We do Havdalah on wine. But we don't do the blessing on the Besamim, on the scent. So comes another question. Why is everything prohibited on Shabbat? It doesn't make sense. Really. If we cut to the chase, as they say. It kind of makes sense that many things should be allowed to do on Shabbat. It will make my Shabbat a little bit nicer. Instead of walking 3 miles to a Bet Knesset or carrying a stroller 14 flights of stairs, or I'm starving, I can't make myself a nice meal? Why am I not allowed to do so many things on Shabbat? So there's a story about a certain individual He used to live in France, even though he was originally from Russia. His name is Berel Gurevich. Maybe you heard of him. In the year 1946, he tried to run away from Russia. They came to the border. Somehow his wife was able to cross the border. He got caught, and U-turned back in. And because he was caught, then he was sent to some working camp. Okay, he comes to the working camp. This camp, they sewed wallets all day long. That's the job. Okay, he comes there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sewing wallets all day long. Now comes Shabbat. What is he going to do on Shabbat? In his mind, he's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to work on Shabbat? What am I going to do? He says, you know what? Shabbat is way important to me than anything else. I'm not going to desecrate Shabbat. And he ran away Friday before Shabbat, and he hid in the woods. He didn't run away from the camp. He just hid in the woods. Motzei Shabbat he came, and he suddenly reappeared. He knew that they were not going to be happy with that. And of course, the next day he's called in to the committee or to the guards or whatever, and they start questioning him. In his mind, the second that he got called, he was like, okay, I'm going to have to come up with some excuse. Where was I the whole Shabbat? I'll say maybe I wasn't feeling good, I was in the bed, whatever. Okay, he goes and sits in front of a little committee, and one of the guys in the committee turns to him and asks him in Yiddish, what are you ran away because of the Shabbat? So he decided to just say, yeah, I can work on Shabbat. I ran away. Okay, he was now expecting to be judged harshly. They told him, you know what? We're going to now make you the guard of the warehouses. And you don't have to do anything. You just sit like this. No labor. The guard of the warehouses. This is the easiest job. I'm like getting the best job in the camp. And not only that, I can not desecrate Shabbat because they don't do anything. The guard doesn't do anything. He just sits. So I can sit there the whole Shabbat. So he couldn't understand. Why did they give him this job? He thought he's going to be lashed now or chas v'shalom punished. They told him, because you were so strong in your belief about the Shabbat, we know what we know that you are. You're going to be honest and faithful. They told him, all the rest of the guys that we put them to guard the warehouses, you know what they do? They steal wallets and then they sell it. Shuk shachor, underground, black market. And they said, because you are so strong on your Shabbat and you were willing to get punished and chas v'shalom, torture or something, but you still didn't break the Shabbat, we know that you're so faith to your emunah, for your belief, you're also not going to steal. So you are the best one to guard the warehouses. So they put him to guard the warehouses. And he would sit there and he could, during the week he had his regular job, just sitting and doing nothing. And he would say Tehillim or whatever. Shabbat, it doesn't work, it's not really work. So he got saved just because he was very powerful in saying, I'm not going to desecrate Shabbat. So again, we want to understand from this, what is this extreme with Shabbat? You know how many people died just not to desecrate Shabbat? How many people go to what an extent, I'm not desecrating Shabbat? Why this extreme with the Shabbat? That sometimes people will sit, they'll stay hungry, they'll sit in the middle. I know people that stop the car in the middle of a highway because it was Shabbat. Stop, that's it. Although, just that you know, this is not the time now to go about Ilchot Shabbat, but if a person went into a car, he's not driving, but he went into a car as a passenger, and the car started before Shabbat, and it's going into Shabbat, you're allowed to stay in the car until the car stops, and then by itself, and you walk out. Of course, you can't open the door, you will turn the light on, there's different laws. But, nevertheless, I know people who stopped on a highway, Shabbat, that's it, I'm going to be on the highway. So one time we were invited a few years ago to speak in some town, somewhere in Pennsylvania. They have a yeshiva there, but a yeshiva for all the boys who are a little bit, I don't want to say troublemakers because they're good boys. They're troublemakers, but nevertheless, so they brought me to speak there the whole Shabbat. And I went there with my wife and kids, and we were in traffic for like 4 hours. We were stuck. We lived in New York, just crossing the Canal Street and the Holland Tunnel. We were in traffic. It was unbelievable traffic. At some point, my wife said, we're never going to make it. Turn around. I said, if we turn around, we're not going to make it back. We were already calling places, where can we stop in New Jersey? I mean, we were like, we were never going to make it. And then I told my wife, you know what? If I'm going to drive 80 miles an hour the whole way, we'll make it. And I was driving like a meshugane, and it started raining, pouring rain. I'm flying on the highway, and as you should have seen the car. We're sitting in the car, we're all singing, and we got all the kids go hyped up. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm never making this. I'm going to be sitting and on a highway for the entire Shabbat. And then we got into traffic again. Traffic. Now I'm going to have to go 95 miles an hour the whole way. I don't even know how we made it literally to the last of the 18 minutes. We came with the car. It's like we all jumped out of the car. The car just stopped. And in the middle of the ride, I mean, this was like my wife says, a ride from hell. In the middle of the driving, one of my kids threw up because I was driving so fast. And my wife is like, stop the car. I can't stop the car. Can't just imagine what's going on in the car. Stop the car. He needs to throw up. Let him throw up in the car. And I'm flying. Just imagine what's going on there. But I was like, you know what? A couple dozens of kids are waiting for me for Shabbat, to be with them the whole Shabbat. I'm not sleeping on the highway. But in my mind, I was like, I might be sleeping in a car now for the whole Shabbat with my kids. And I keep telling them, what do we have to eat? I mean, we have some crackers and we have some cookies. I mean, we're going to have to do kiddush on the engine, the oil of the engine. Anyways, but nevertheless, Baruch Hashem, we made it. Literally, in the last minute of the 18 minutes. But I do know people that slept on a highway and many other extreme things. And I have a lot of stories with what we had to do for Shabbat. So why this extreme? Why the Shabbat has to come in such an extreme way? Have you ever been to a Shabbat, to a house, a minute before Shabbat? What's going on there? Put the chicken in the oven! Everybody's screaming, take a shower, take a shower! When you go into some normal's house, it's like a madhouse. Why couldn't it be nice? Okay, so another 10 minutes, what's the big deal? Okay, Shabbat comes, so we'll accept Shabbat in 10 minutes. Don't need to freak out. Why the extreme? Or what we say in Hebrew, kitzoniyut. You go out of your sometimes people go mental on that. Not only that, comes another question. If we mentioned before that Shabbat is not for us, Shabbat is for Hashem, Shabbat la Hashem Elokecha, what, Shabbat, Hashem needs rest. He gets tired. Hashem gets tired. Vayanach bayom hashvi'i. And Hashem rested on the seventh day. Or Hashem needs to rest. I'm a human, I need to rest. Hashem doesn't need to rest. So really when you think about it, the whole thing doesn't really make much of a sense. Yeah. So what's the idea here? Shabbat is not for me, it's for the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu, it says, needs to rest. Hashem doesn't need to rest. You know what we say every day in the morning? Hayonoten la'ayif koach. We are tired, we need koach. Hashem is the one who's giving me koach. Why do Hashem needs to rest? What's the idea behind all this? Quick story and we're done. 100 years ago, give or take, I think I even shared that story once, but there was a very rich individual known as Moshe Montefiore. Very rich individual, lived in England. He was a broker. At the time, there was, as usual, a lot of anti-Semitism in the stock market. They only allowed 12 Jews to be in the stock market as brokers. They said, the Jews are going to come take all the money. They allowed only 12. He was one of them. Extremely, extremely wealthy. And he had a rule of iron. Shabbat is Shabbat. 12 o'clock already, Friday afternoon, closes everything. So he would lose 2 days, technically, of trading. Because Sunday, the stock market is closed. And Shabbat. You know, for when you trade, that's 1 day, you're losing 1 day. That's a big time. Shabbat, how they say in Hebrew, chok barzel, an iron rule, nothing. Okay, one Shabbat, they're sitting around the table, singing songs, and so forth. Hear a knock on the door, somebody walks in, and he tells him, listen, my boss, so-and-so, sent me and to tell you that there's a big deal going down, and he needs your help. He says, listen, you know my rule, Shabbat, I don't do anything. Go tell your boss, a very respectful individual, tell him there's nobody to talk to. Come to me Motzei Shabbat. He comes back and tells him, listen, my boss sent with me a letter and he says he needs your help, and he says that if you're not going to help him, he's not going to do business with you anymore. You're going to be done. You're going to go out. So he says, I'm not going to do anything. It's Shabbat. So he tells him, just read the letter. Read what he says. He says, no, I can't even open the letter. Can't even open the letter on Shabbat. I'm not going to do nothing. Tell your boss, even if he doesn't want to work with me forever again, no problem. Okay, Shabbat passes. This individual calls him, calls him Montefiore, hugs him, kisses him, thank you so much, thank you, because of you I made a lot of money. He says, really? Why did you make a lot of money? He says, because I had a few business partners here, and we were talking about you, and I mentioned that you can't do business with you on Shabbat. And they said, everybody has a price, especially the Jews. They'll do anything for money. And he says, oh no, I will bet you that this guy, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to move him. And he told him, I made a huge bet with these guys. They bet that we can make you do something on Shabbat. And I said, doesn't matter, the world will turn upside down. You're not going to do anything on Shabbat. And we made a big bet. And he says, and I won because you didn't reply, you didn't come, you didn't open the letter, you didn't do anything. And of course, he was very happy and thanked him. When we want to know what's this secret behind the Shabbat that some people are so fanatic over it, that's how you have to be. You have to be fanatic over the Shabbat, and we can't even be giving a discount in one little thing. The whole week we are immersed in this world. We work hard, we have to make a living, we have to run from one place to another, banks, bills, jobs. The week is very, very stressful. It's very hard to be spiritual throughout the week. If you're lucky, you make it to the minyan 3 times a day. If you're lucky, you come to classes. Most people, even when they're observant, it's very hard to maintain your spirituality throughout the week. Even if you come to a class, you learn, you pray, you relax, right away, somebody does something, right away you get full of anger, full of anxiety. You want to say Lashon Hara, you want to cheat, you want to lie, you get upset. If you're like in some Torah retreat, it's very easy for you to be spiritual and holy. We spoke about it last week when we talked about Kedushim. Put me now on a mountain with a goat and a book, I'll be relaxed the whole day. Nothing's going to bother me, no phone calls, no aggravations. But we're living in this world, we are full of aggravations. Whether you want it or not, even when you come out of the shul, even in the shul, how many times there's arguments in the shul, disagreements, Lashon Hara. Then you have to be involved in work all day long, and business and support, and you are completely disconnected from spirituality. It's very, very hard to be connected to spirituality throughout the week. Throughout the week, it's extremely, extremely hard to maintain a strong connection to the Torah. And there are 3 levels how I lose, so to say, my altitude throughout the week. First of all is that I lose physical power throughout the week because I work. Whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you work hard or not, some people don't work, but you lose koach, energy throughout the week. Whether you acknowledge it or not. The second thing is you're so busy running your life, you can't use your thoughts and your imagination on very good things. What's called an imagination. But you have to focus right now. I have to focus on my job. I have to focus on, I have to make dinner. I have to do shopping. You lose what's called koach hadimayon, the power of thoughts, when you come up with good ideas, when you're relaxed. When you're sitting on vacation, you're like, and you're starting to think of all sorts of things. And the third thing that you lose throughout the week is your ruchaniyut, your spirituality. Sometimes I see people come to pray shacharit. It's great, but they pray for 20 minutes. Zip, zap, they go in, out, and out. And they're late to the minyan, or they miss the minyan, or the class, or whatever. Even if we try to maintain spirituality throughout the week, it's not so easy. So we have 3 levels how we lose, so to say, our connection throughout the Shabbat, throughout the week. We lose physical power, we lose this power of imagination, our thoughts and creativity, and also our spirituality. Now, Shabbat comes once a week to pull me out of the world, to disconnect me from the world. If, chas v'shalom, we wouldn't have the Shabbat, you would work 7 days a week. You would be stuck in this world under stress 7 days a week. Shabbat comes and whoop, takes me out of the world. So, corresponding to the 3 levels that I lose throughout the week, I gain them back on Shabbat. Throughout the week I lose energy and power, and Shabbat I rest. I actually rest. And I rejuvenate. I lose throughout the week the power of imagination. Then Shabbat, I have time. That's when I sit and I start making plans. I want to do this, I want to do that. I regain all this power. And more than that, that's when you really can experience spirituality. Throughout the week, you have dinner, 20 minutes. Shabbat, Friday night, 3 hours. Shabbat, you learn 2 hours quietly. That's when you gain back your spirituality. The idea is, in Shabbat, first of all, Shabbat is to take you out of this world. But what happens is that sometimes when we're so involved in this world, you know what happens is, we get too involved in the world. And there's a story of once two brothers that each one went on a separate way. One became more observant and more in a spiritual life, but was not so financially doing well. And another one went into business and he became very, very wealthy. At some point, the poorer brother needed to marry off his kids, so he decided to go to his brother in the big city and ask if he can help him out with money. And when he came there, his brother was constantly too busy for him. He came one day to talk to him, the brother was running deals, meetings, everything. At some point, after a couple days of him being in the city, the brother came and told him, "What did you want? You came here, you're sitting here for a couple days. You wanted to talk to me." He says, "It's okay, it's okay. It's okay, I don't want to bother you." He says, "Why you? No, you came here, I'm sorry, I didn't have time for you for the last couple days, but now I have time. Well, what did you want?" He says, "Well, I came to ask for some money to marry off my kids, but I see something that it taught me something more profound. If you go to a safari or a zoo, there's all sorts of animals. You see a lion, very noble animal, you see giraffes, you see all sorts of animals. There's one animal that lives in its own excrement, and it's enjoying it. It lives in the filth. And if the animal could, it will even stuck his nose into the dirt. But he can't, he needs to breathe." And so the poor brother told the old brother, "You are like this animal. You are so living in your own filth of money and power and fame. And if you could, you would stick your nose into it also." And so that's how bad you get sunk into the world. And we don't even notice that sometimes when we're around worldly things, we get so involved in everything around the world that we get stuck in it. And it becomes our life. And Shabbat is coming to take you out. Get disconnected from all this junk of the world. Not only that, once a week we're above the world. Throughout the week, okay, I understand you have to be in the world. I understand you have to stand in line in the bank. You have to fight for making money. You have to take care of things. But the thing is that sometimes we get so involved in the world that if we could, we would just be stuck in this world. Shabbat comes to take you out of the world one day. Just get out of the world. Clean your mind, get attached more to spirituality, connect to your source, and so forth. How does that happen? I mean, we're talking here a day that repeats itself once a week. Do you really feel that on Shabbat you're out of the world? Okay, so instead of driving to everywhere you walk, okay. Or you take it easier. The prayer is a little bit longer. But how do you really go out of the world? On Shabbat happens a miracle, whether you notice it or not. Rashi says that Ke'ilu ne'esta lecha melacha. Everything is done for you on Shabbat. And then you rest. What does that mean? That on Shabbat, you are like a guest in this world. Have you noticed that when you are a guest, you get served? Nobody tells you, "Oh, you're a guest, start cleaning the table. Take the garbage out." I mean, if you're a nice guest, you say, "Can I help?" But when you're a guest, you are being catered. So Rashi says, we are a guest in this world on Shabbat. Hashem says, "I take care of everything. I'll take care of everything. You are like a guest here." And this is the miracle that happens. And this affects the rest of the days of the week. When I do what I need to do on Shabbat, I become exalted from the world. I become above the world. I go out of the world and I become like a guest in this world. Now when I do that, it will actually affect the rest of the week. Now, Shabbat is not only not to work. It's not about just not working. Since I get an extra soul, what's called a neshama yetera, I get separated from the world. And that's really the unique part of the Shabbat. Then that's why we're not allowed to do anything. Because if I do any type of labor, like on a Yom Tov, cooking or anything to preparing, then I'm still in this world. Yes, I'm celebrating the festival, but I didn't get disconnected from the world. Shabbat, I get completely disconnected from the world. Now, what's the benefit? If you don't do that, then you're constantly stuck in this world. You lose physical power. You lose your power of imagination, what's called a healthy mind. Most people, their mind is not so healthy. When you're stressed from work, what do? I need a vacation. Why do I need a vacation? Just to sit and not to do nothing. Why? I rejuvenate myself. Not only that I rejuvenate my power, I rejuvenate my imaginary power. So Shabbat, when do I really benefit from it? When I don't do nothing. If I will start doing things, you're not going to benefit from the magical miracle of Shabbat. When I tap into the Shabbat, when I'm so extreme, that's when I'm able to be elevated by the Shabbat from the rest of the world, then it affects me for the rest of the week. In Hebrew, when we desecrate Shabbat, we say lechalel Shabbat. When I became observant, and they used to tell me, asur lechalel Shabbat, you're not allowed to lechalel Shabbat, to desecrate Shabbat. I couldn't figure out why they're using the word lechalel. You know what it means lechalel in Hebrew? Chalil is a flute. Lechalel, when you lechalel b'chalil, then you play the flute. And I was like, why are you saying lechalel Shabbat? It doesn't even make sense. Till some wise man came and told me, this is not lechalel b'chalil, this is not to play the flute. Halal in Hebrew is a space, a void. Now what happens is that when Shabbat comes in, all the worlds go up. All the spiritual worlds. And what happens is, becomes now a gap, a halal, between the world below and the world above. If you are holding the Shabbat, then the Shabbat elevates you above the world. If you don't hold the Shabbat, you are stuck in that gap. You are stuck in this void, in this halal, in this empty space. So you're not attached to the Shabbat, and you're not in the world. You're stuck in between. And this is called Lechalel Shabbat, that you're going in the halal, in the gap, in the empty space between the world and Shabbat. So Shabbat is my elevator that takes me above the worlds. Therefore, I'm not allowed to do anything. I'll do one little labor. That's it. You desecrated Shabbat. You back down. You lose your altitude. So the Shabbat is extremely strict. Shabbat comes with all these laws. Why? Because when I get attached to it, then the Shabbat will elevate me, then I'm getting pulled out of the world. Once I'm getting pulled out of the world for 25 hours, I rejuvenate all my powers. I get connected back to my source, to Ruchaniyut, to spirituality. So my entire week, my prayers are better. My blessings are better. My learning Torah is more clear. The Shabbat feeds me for the rest of the week. As I said many times, quoting the Zohar, Kulu Yamin Bidbarchin Mineh. All the days after Shabbat that get blessed by the Shabbat. You observe Shabbat the right way, the rest of the week, smooth. Now, I'm not saying that your life will be easy suddenly, but your spiritual connection, and you don't lose connection to your source. So what we want to take from that is, first of all, we want to conclude by understanding why Shabbat is attached to a Yom Tov, because it's one of the days that we do apply a certain type of celebration. So it's attached to all the holidays, like a Rosh Chodesh. But why is Shabbat separate? Because Shabbat is the day when I'm connected to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is the day when Hashem sanctifies the day. When I do what Hashem wants me to do, then I get attached to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. A festival, a Yom Tov, a Rosh Chodesh, this we do. We sanctify it. We decide when it's going to be. So when I want to take something practical, it's not only learning the text. Something practical is to understand the power of Shabbat. We just learned now the class before that Shabbat is as if you did the entire Torah. Shabbat shakul keneged kol Torah. There is a verse in this parasha that it says, talking about Korban Tamid, and it repeats twice, B'yom HaShabbat Ya'archenu. It repeats it twice. Ben Ish Chai explains that it's going to, on the Shabbat, the Friday night, is the first time, and Shabbat the day. It's like two aspects of the Shabbat. But nevertheless, we learn there that when a person observes Shabbat, it's like as if he did the entire Torah. Shakul keneged kol Torah. So how many mitzvot we have in the Torah? 613 mitzvot. Remove one mitzvah of Shabbat, and we're left with 612 mitzvot. 612 mitzvot, I'm sure you're familiar with the term Taryag mitzvot. So when you observe Shabbat, you're doing Taryab mitzvot, 612. In this verse, in this parasha, it says that by observing the Shabbat is a covenant between us and Hashem. We have three major covenants: Tefillin, Shabbat, and circumcision. So you always have to have two covenants. So during the week we put Tefillin. Circumcision, you can't get rid of it. You have it the whole week. And Shabbat. But Shabbat is a covenant. And covenant in Hebrew is Brit. Brit is written Bet, Reish, Yud, Taf. And 612 mitzvot corresponding to the weight of the entire Shabbat is Taryab, Taf, Reish, Yud, Bet. Same letters. So when we observe Shabbat, it's like as if you did all the Torah. So we want to take from that the importance of Shabbat, and not only to do it basic, that you put all your heart in the Shabbat. And not only that, you want to learn all the laws of Shabbat, because many people, even though they observe Shabbat, they're missing a lot of mitzvot, or they're doing a lot of things that Chas v'Shalom causes them to desecrate the Shabbat. So we want to take from that the importance of Shabbat. There's a place in the Talmud, in Tractate Sanhedrin, specifically in page 118, where it says if we will observe two Shabbatot the right way, we get redeemed. And the conclusion based on our sages is that it's not two separate Shabbatot. It's talking about one Shabbat, but the two aspects of Shabbat. But if we observe the Shabbat one time the right way, as a nation, right away we get redeemed. The sad news is that we never observed Shabbat as a nation, because if not, we would be already redeemed. But nevertheless, this goes to show you the importance of Shabbat. So if you are observing Shabbat, then you want to take it to the next level, to the complete next level. And you want every week to add another level, to add another mitzvah. If you heard me say in the beginning of this class to the previous class, make yourself a habit. Buy a book of Hilchot Shabbat, of laws of Shabbat, and every day learn 2-3 halachot. Because when I became observant, 4 or 5 years, I would observe Shabbat, and I thought I'm observing Shabbat. Till one time I found out, I got to the section in Shulchan Aruch, and I would read all the laws, and I would find out that I'm desecrating Shabbat every day, every Shabbat. Because I didn't know all the rules about the cooking, and about sifting, and mixing, and muktzeh, and carrying, and moving. I was like, wait a minute, I'm desecrating Shabbat. I think that I'm observing Shabbat. I'm actually not. So you want to do yourself a favor, you buy a little book of laws of Shabbat, and every day learn 3-4 halachot, that you become very, very knowledgeable Shabbat. And your entire week has to be around the Shabbat. You can keep Shabbat because you are forced, and you can keep Shabbat because you want it and you love it. That's why every day when we pray Shacharit, we say today is the first day of Shabbat. Yom Rishon b'Shabbat. So today is the second day of Shabbat. You want to live that your entire being is around the Shabbat. And B'ezrat Hashem, you live the entire week around Shabbat, and Shabbat, you keep it kehilchata, as the halacha says. Needless to say that throughout Shabbat, you are totally elevated from the world, but it affects you for the rest of the week. The rest of the week, your mind is not so involved in the world. Your mind is more free for good things, for spiritual things, positive thoughts. Makes you stronger physically, healthier, happier. So comes the parasha and concludes in a very profound way that how important is Shabbat for our soul. And we want to take from that even if you are already observing Shabbat, then constantly, la'alot b'kodesh, constantly add more and more and more. Needless to say, if a person is not observing Shabbat, then now is a very good time to start applying that. And even if it takes you a while, it took me like 3 years to start observing Shabbat. But every Shabbat I added one thing, and another act, and another prohibition, till you get to a point, because why? Shabbat is the highest of all, and the Olam Haba is called Olam Shel Shabbat, it's Yom Shekulo Tov, and that's what we want to reach, to Olam Haba, where it's all perfect peace, happiness, and health. B'ezrat Hashem, with the merit of observing Shabbat, as a nation, then we should be redeemed out of this exile. B'ezrat Hashem, if we will be able to feel il malei shemeshamrim et Shabbat, if we are able to observe the Shabbat, then we go out of this horrible exile finally. It should be b'chesed b'rachamim, with mercy and with kindness. B'ezrat Hashem, we should all merit to benefit and enjoy and really see the greatness and holiness of Shabbat and how amazing it is for us and for our entire nation, and needless to say for the entire world. Have a beautiful, beautiful week.